What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is, because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development program I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated, yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews, and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so, into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer, or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk.
Hello, I'm Granger Forson. www.bizsmart-gloucestershire.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn. This time on ScaleUp Radio, I speak with James Wilkes, the founder and CEO of Wilxite Limited. Wilxite is a software development company based in Stroud, with a 27-strong team who are based all around the world. James started the business 12 years ago, built on the ashes of a previous business he had created. As always, we cover a lot of ground, including building a client retainer model allows for profitable growth. Building a relationship with clients through the delivery of quality builds trust. Attitude is key, as we're all in the people business regardless of what we do. And empower your team to take risks and to learn. What I love about this conversation with James, and we continued it long after the conversation stopped recording, is that his experience in creating businesses, he says, is as much about your motivation of where you want to get to as it is about what you learn. The first influences the second significantly. I know you'll get a huge amount out of this episode, so let's go over and hear from James. Hello, James Wilkes. Welcome to ScaleUp Radio podcast. Please introduce yourself and your business to us.
Yeah, hi. My name is James Wilkes. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Wilxite Limited, based in Stroud. We are software developers, and that's a really loose phrase, but an even looser phrase is we use technology to solve businesses' problems, and I'm sure we'll get into some of that shortly, but yeah.
So give us an understanding, how big are you? How many employees do you have? Where are they located in Stroud or around the world? Or
Yeah, so in actual fact, we are now up to 27 members of the team. And in fact, we've got quite a global reach. We are mainly in Stroud, probably 2/3 of those are based in Stroud or the Southwest. We have an actual office in India, a place called Gurugram in India, with a couple of developers out there, but they're not outsourced. They are actually employed by us. And we've actually got 2 people permanently based in North America, and we've also got another person in Greece. So yeah, we're fairly spread out across the globe.
Wow, yes, a lot of that technology software companies seem to sort of have a similar sort of thing, but I've not quite had a mix like that before, especially in Greece. I've not come across that one before. Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was a kind of an evolution, really. We started, if you went back before COVID, it was all entirely Stroud based. Everybody was in the office. COVID then led to obviously everybody being out of the office, and actually some of the people. So the person who lives in Greece is actually a Greek person. They started with us in Stroud, wanted to move back home, and we were able to facilitate that move, and the same actually went for the two in America. So they started with us in Stroud, and both of them for separate personal reasons wanted to emigrate to America. One's in Antigua and one's in Michigan, and it's actually worked very well for us because we've been able to enable that for them, which is obviously, for our point of view, has kept the team. So it's meant that, we've not had to recruit again. But actually, because as a software company, and we operate other ancillary services such as servers as well, that actually having a 24-hour coverage now is perfect for us. So we've got almost, with the Indian team and the people in America, they kind of dovetail nicely in with the UK time zone. And actually, we've really kind of lent into it as a convenient thing that's actually worked out brilliantly for the business, really.
And how long has the business been running?
Okay, that's another kind of quite not as straightforward a question to answer as you might think. The current iteration of the business, we started about 12 years ago, and but actually it was born of another business that was up in the Midlands, and that dates all the way back to 1999, and we've still got clients that we deal with to this day that we won in the Midlands back in the sort of 99, 2000 era. So, but for various reasons, which I'm more than happy to go into, that business died in 2008, and we re-established the business down here about a year later.
Yes, that was the millennium bug period, wasn't it? The 2000s.
Yeah, at the very beginning was, yeah, that's right. And the 2008 was the financial crash, which I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming that as the reason why the old business failed, but that was certainly a learning curve. Let's put it that way.
Brilliant. So you talked about the business, your software developers, your technical solutions for your clients' business problems. So give us an understanding. What type of things do you produce? How do you delight your customers in terms of their problems?
Yeah, so I have always had a curiosity where business, people and technology kind of merge, and I don't want that to sound overly pretentious. It's not some great kind of vision or mission of ours, but for me it was all very personal. I'd got, I liked the fact of understanding the challenges that our clients were facing, and some of it was just nosiness. I like to talk to people. I like to understand their particular problems in their business. And if you go back right to the dawning of when we started this back in 99, 2000, it was really the beginning of the internet, and businesses were looking maybe at a website. They might have been looking at e-commerce if they were particularly advanced, but software as a service, I don't think that term even existed at the time. Certainly cloud didn't exist, that when we first started. Yet we and my background before starting the business was in engineering. I was an electronics engineer and very much physical stuff, control systems, robotics, that kind of thing. And so when I started the business, I'd got an eye to kind of going, well, yeah, websites are great, they're fine, but actually, what else can we do with this kind of technology that we've got? And a lot of it was very much an evolution. There was no one kind of eureka moment where we suddenly decided to be this particular type of business, but we'd built a website for one of our clients, and it was a manufacturing company, and I was very familiar with that process. And so I just suggested to them, look, we could probably build something in the background that could assist you in some of the processes that you were doing. And in their particular instance, it was a quote generation system. They got these very complex quotes. They were a very technical business themselves, and they were making lots of mistakes. And it was very much limiting their business. They'd had to have very skilled people working in their kind of quote departments. And that meant that either got a very long training kind of route, or they were very much, their business itself was throttled by the fact of they couldn't expand because they were lacking sort of expertise to be able to do these quotes. And we kind of looked and said, well, yeah, if we can extract that level of knowledge from you and systemize that kind of process. And that became really the very first business management system we did. It was effectively a technical quote generation system for boilers, as it was, big commercial boiler systems for offices and skyrise blocks and things like this. And kind of, in a way, sort of flicked a switch for us. And we kind of, actually, hang on, we've really, again, solved this problem. There was a challenge within that business. And that business, incidentally, went from being, when we first started working with them in 99, 2000, were two guys basically in a shed. And last year they were just bought out by NatWest Venture Capital, and they are the biggest commercial heating company in the UK. And our contribution to that, and I'm not being arrogant here, was definitely, we helped them oil the wheels of their growth. They would have definitely been, their growth would have been stymied by the lack of experience. And really, we then took that, and I kind of then obviously thought, okay, what else can we do? And we got various clients who we'd done websites for and things, and thought, okay, well, what can we do for you to help? And actually, it wasn't always background stuff. It wasn't always business management systems. It might be front-end bits. It might be stuff on websites, that simulators or calculation systems or things like this, which again nowadays are seen really as a kind of, so what, yeah, that's mainstream. But back in the sort of early 2000s, this was really quite new. And what we found is we built a level of knowledge and expertise around our ability to understand the client's business and then go back to them with kind of solutions that might help. And they sometimes may not be technical. We might sometimes just suggest kind of, well, do you even need to do this thing? Can you get rid of this? And so we kind of over the years evolved this sort of system of process flow, really, where we kind of go, can we automate it? Can you get rid of it? If we can't automate it, can we de-skill it? And that's a really critical thing for me as well, where one thing I would like to get across is we don't engineer these systems with a view to getting rid of people. What we engineer the systems to do is to facilitate the people in the business to do the best job that they can do. And so these poor people who are generating these quotes in this heating company, they were then freed up to do other things. These were highly skilled technical people. They didn't need to be sitting in front of a computer generating quotes all day. Somebody else could do that, And so, and that's what we found. And so generally our clients are, people who are looking to use technology to grow, looking to use technology to improve their services. And we really look to kind of build proper long-term relationships with our clients. And in most instances, we're talking many, many years, that we've worked with our clients and really get to under the skin of what it is that they do. And I say I use the phrase technology because, yes, most of it's software development, most of it's online stuff, but it could be IoT devices, it could be different types of things like tracking in vehicles or whatever, but we just sort of look at the holistic picture of their challenges and then go, okay, this is where we can improve your customer service.
So how many clients do you currently work with then? What's the sort of size of your client base?
Yeah, so on a month-by-month basis, we'd be working with about 20 clients at any one time. Probably on the books in a year, we might work with about anything between 40 and 60, say. However, we did have a bit of an epiphany a few years ago about the way we structured our work, and we moved to a much more of a kind of retained contract basis with clients. And we've now ended up with probably about 8 core retained clients that make up by far and away the lion's share of both our development and our turnover and profit.
Yes, yeah. Moving to the ability for reoccurring revenue is definitely a powerful switch when businesses get that and understand that as opportunities to grow and to scale. It brings that stability. So you're working with a client long term. How do you go about understanding then, what their needs are? You talked about a process mapping type thought there in terms of doing that. So, what's your sort of your business model, how you do that?
Yeah. So again, it really depends, and it depends on the client, and it depends on their particular need, their particular point in their business journey. A lot of our historic clients, we have grown with them. So they started small and we were small, and now they're bigger and we're obviously bigger. And so that's been a very organic process. So we've just understood their challenges as they've grown, and through obviously a large amount of communication with the team. We also have a very flat structure the way we run the business. So even our most junior team and the most newest sort of members of our development team, we encourage to communicate and understand the clients as well. So we positively encourage, unlike say other development houses that might have account managers say that kind of shield a lot of the actual production work from the client, we actually take an opposite view of that, where we go, well, actually, we positively encourage our developers to engage with the client, to understand, because we believe that actually if the people actually doing the work, doing the development work and the front end work actually know why they're doing it, firstly, they get more satisfaction from the fact that, so it's not this intangible, esoteric bit of development work they're doing. It's actually for somebody or something, and it's going to actually have this particular, benefit. But of course, the other thing is they can produce better results. We also positively encourage a kind of challenging environment from a positive point of view. So, if they go, well, if a client asks for something and one of our developers, why the hell are they doing this? We actually encourage them to ask that question. And actually our real sort of thing with one of the reasons I believe we've built up such a long-term relationship with our clients, and we're by no means perfect. If you spoke to any of our clients on here, there would be challenges that we'll have had. But I think the one thing that most of our clients would certainly vouch for is that we have a level of trust. And the trust is that if we don't understand something, or we may make a mistake or whatever, we'll ask, we'll put our hands up, we'll do whatever. And that mutual understanding and that mutual trust really kind of helps, because we're at the end of the day, we're taking quite large risks. We're doing things, we're deliberately pushing the technical envelope quite often, not necessarily at the bleeding edge of things, but maybe just behind it. And that inevitably carries challenges, and things that we can't necessarily predict. And so on a very loose level, some of the process is quite organic. It's just building up an understanding of the business and building up communication channels, and some of it will be largely driven by the client. And what we find is that no one client is the same, and no one bit of software development we do is the same either. And we deliberately don't try and shoehorn a specific process or way of communicating or way of managing a project on particular clients. Because what we've found is there are some clients, say, who are very disciplined. They know exactly what they want. They've got, 2-3 year strategies, development strategies in their own business that, great, awesome. We can really work with that, and we can help to deliver their long-term strategies. Brilliant. We've got other clients, though, that are a lot more knee-jerk and a lot more responsive. And a lot of it isn't necessarily even a criticism to the client themselves, because it might be that their industry is a lot more dynamic, or they've got, other seasonal issues or contractual problems that crop up where other companies don't have that. And so for me, we've always kind of, again, part of this understanding of getting under the skin of the client to go, okay, this particular client is going to require a little bit of assistance in the project management, or a little bit of assistance in maybe the strategic view of where they're going, even as a business. Kind of really, are you wanting to, what are you actually trying to get out of these systems, or where are you actually heading for? Other companies are very, very clear and great. And actually, both are equally good for us because, you know, one gives us a really kind of long-term view, and the other, we can be a little bit more fluid and maybe even a bit more creative with our solutions with them as well sometimes, you know. So it's a balance, and there's pros and cons to both approaches, but that's generally how we do it. In terms of specifically answering the question about how we would go about getting under the skin of the client, a lot of it is initially about communication and about structuring. And if we were to get into the sort of technicalities of it, we might look to maybe map their business process. You know, we wouldn't talk technical, we'd talk in a business point of view. You know, what are you actually doing here? Where is this happening? Who is doing what? What duplication is going on? You know, very much along the lines of the sort of lean process, but we would take each of the processes, and very rarely we would look to change what they do process-wise, because often we're dealing with already successful businesses. It's not, I'm not arrogant enough to walk in and kind of go, no, you don't want to do it like that. You want to do it like this. But what we will do is look for inefficiencies or clear duplication or clear risks within the process to do with errors or whatever's going on, and really look at that. And again, sometimes we'll do is assist the clients to understand actually what impact that has, because clients will know probably anecdotally where the challenges come. They'll know that, you know, there's a complaint coming in about this all the time, but this, again, you know, there's techniques like this, you know, the 5 whys technique and things that will take you back. We will often help clients to actually understand that actually the problem may not be here. It might be back in another part of the process that actually originating that thing. And we'll try and quantify that and assist clients to really understand where possible, you know, their kind of inefficiencies or again, risks lie. And it's not all about inefficiency. Sometimes it's about going, in fact, the best jobs really of all are giving clients a real unique point to their service, you know. So rather than buying off the shelf where you're shoehorned into a particular process, say, you know, where we can kind of go, okay, what actual edge can you give to your clients? You know, can we help engineer that into your processes to give your clients the best outcome? So again, it really depends on the client, depends on their state, and it depends on where they're at. And quite often, actually, it's really obvious when you first start in a client where the problems actually lie, and you can kind of start there and move forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would summarize that in terms of you try to find out what your client needs rather than what they just want. In terms of getting under the skin.
Absolutely. And we challenge them with it as well. You know, we deliberately push back with it, you know, where we feel they're not necessarily thinking about it properly, you know.
So how do you know, the marketplace in terms of the software and development you do, how do you find new clients and develop new relationships?
So I'm laughing because up until about 18 months ago, we had a single word on our website. So for a decade, we literally just had the word Wilxite on our own website, which was both a source of pride and embarrassment, really. You know, it was a bit of both, really. And the reason for that was that actually we've grown really quite rapidly over the last 5 or 6 years. And we've achieved that entirely through growing our existing clients. You know, we've grown with those clients and supporting their growth and word of mouth. You know, and in fact, we've literally just started work with a very large client this month. In fact, we brought in one of our largest clients this month, and they did what was classic, which they went into one of their suppliers who uses one of our systems and went, "This is great. You know, who does this for you?" And they've now signed up for us to develop them an equivalent system. You know, so. With the website, we actually ended up creating less about bringing new clients on board and more around recruitment. It was becoming a challenge to recruit people when they couldn't see anything. So, and you know, we're still on a growth path. You know, so I'm certainly not putting people off from inquiring with us. But yeah, at the moment we've certainly grown pretty organically without having to promote ourselves. Really, the sales have come in not without any effort, but certainly the pipeline has been fairly full, over the years.
And over the years, there must have been, significant changes in terms of software and packages, and things have gone online, and we're now in the cloud. And what have been what are the key trends currently, and what do you think will be coming next?
Okay, that's an interesting one. I'm notoriously bad at forecasting. Okay, so as my children pointed out to me during the COVID epidemic, I was we'll be locked down for a couple of weeks. It'll be fine. But yeah, so it's funny because so in terms of trends, I mean, the kind of cloud stuff, that, although that phrase winds me up, and I'll explain why later if you want to know, but the cloud was the in phrase sort of 3 or 4 years ago. A couple of years ago, it then moved to big data. Everybody's talking about data warehousing and data analytics and stuff. And suddenly we'd gone from a point of nobody ever mentioning this to all of our big clients talking about data warehousing and data analytics and all this sort of stuff. Now it's AI. I mean, and it's funny, we have, again, nobody has mentioned AI to us in the last 22 years. In the last 12 months, we've had, in fact, only this week, I've had one of our clients emailing going, "Oh, we're thinking of using AI for doing such and such," and so AI is definitely the hot topic at the moment. I've actually got a slightly perhaps controversial view on AI at the moment, which is that I'm not thinking it's going to be quite the panacea that people think it's going to be, and actually, what's interesting about it is it's already you're already seeing people throwing up issues with AI. In fact, I saw an article today which is basically calling AI glorified plagiarism, essentially automated plagiarism, and actually a lot of the things like the ChatGPT stuff, the automated code writing in our industry, for example. In fact, there's already court cases going through about the Copilot code writing systems that have been put in place on even some of the tools we use, which effectively they don't invent anything. They're just hoovering up vast amounts of data across the net. And where code is concerned, a lot of that is published. So they've got a huge amount of data to analyze under the AI sort of systems. But of course, a lot of that code that they're analyzing and bringing into the AI algorithms are actually protected under licensing. Even if they're open source licensing, they're actually protected under licensing. And actually what is happening is a lot of the code that's been spat out, and this goes for writing a song or a poem or an essay, is actually, although it's original in the sense it's not been written like this before, it is using the data that it's gathered from the data set that's got available. And so I think AI is going to very quickly not be seen as a creative tool. I'm not saying it won't evolve into that, but certainly I don't foresee, I think it's a bit of a flash in the pan at the moment where it's been used to sort of write things. I think it's a tool for definite, and certainly where it might be writing content for a website, it's certainly a good starting place, but it's not perfect by any stretch. But I think where AI really does come into its own actually are the stuff that is less sexy and less kind of in the public domain and more kind of process driven. So things like, there's some very well used cases at the moment to do with oncology, for example, where AI has been used in scanning mammograms and the like, and it's already been demonstrated that is actually more effective at, far more effective than a very highly skilled radiographer in detecting cancers, for example. So it's less sexy, but actually far, far more powerful than just the sort of ChatGPT thing, which is all over the news, but kind of actually there's a lot of flaws in that aren't necessarily coming quite to the fore at the moment, but I think they probably will over time. But yeah, the AI certainly, and we're exploring some AI systems ourselves as well. We've got an AI expert that we're looking to build an AI-driven image recognition system again. So we are definitely kind of playing with it ourselves, but not from a kind of a creativity point of view. I think that bit I think will come later on down the line. But yeah, that's the current trends. I think. Other trends, I think probably much of the same. Really, much of the same. We're going to same trajectory in terms of more and more online systems. And that kind of stuff. More and more integration of systems. That's open banking now has become established, so there's going to be a lot more, linking with financial systems or processing like that, so a lot of, again, not very kind of sexy things, but things that actually will really impact people's lives without necessarily even realizing, but a lot of that we're just in the background.
Yeah, I mean, I've also followed the trend of low code, no code. And some of the back end database connections that now, are all written. You can just pull them out of the cloud and use them from various, sometimes you have to pay, sometimes you don't, that now exist. That didn't exist at all, maybe 5-6 years ago, really. So.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting because, I mean, I am not people. I mean, AI, there are some scary scenarios that people band around with AI and all the rest of it. But for me, I've been around long enough in the technology, industry, if you like, and even before I set up the businesses, in an automation world in factories, and and actually, I've sort of little bits of the history on this, in terms of literally the Luddites, smashing mills and things like this. Ultimately, this is just a tool. These are just tools at our disposal. And when I first started coding, for example, there were no code hints. You had to do it in Notepad. You got to know, syntax errors weren't detected. You had to know where the semicolons were missing. It was a nightmare. Now, it's kind of, it's clear. It highlights the code. Does that make it that suddenly everybody can code? No. It just means we can deliver even more powerful systems than we could before. And with every iteration of technology, it's a bit like Word is now so powerful. Yeah, anybody now can create some phenomenal documents with their phone or the thing. You've still got to have that level of creativity and human interaction and knowledge. And of course, the more complicated things, the more difficult they become to use. So I'm quite happy with the progress. It's fine. We'll just learn the next skill and and implement it, and yeah, cool. Everybody wins.
Brilliant. Well, let's go back to the business now and understand its growth and what you've done. So take us through from 2008 to sort of present day, and what are the key things do you think went right, and maybe what maybe went wrong?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to rewind a couple of years from that, only to the end of the previous business, which really then was very instrumental in what happened then the subsequent years. So essentially, we were very successful in the previous business. We were doing very well, and we over leveraged ourselves. We borrowed too much money, and I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming the crash. I'm not blaming the government. Anybody. We were poorly managed because we were overstretched. And when the financial crash hit, we were stressed to the point where we couldn't survive, and that was a big learning curve for me. And we actually took a year out between finishing the other business and starting the next one. And when I started the next one, we were restricted to an extent because I'd got no money. We were starting from zero. I was on my own. I had zero savings, nothing available to run it with. And in fact, at the time, I didn't even want to be coding. I'd had enough. That the closing down of the previous business was traumatic. And frankly, could I have gone and made furniture with hand tools in the woods? I would have done, but it didn't pay the bills. And I got 3 kids and a house and whatever else, and I needed to earn money. And so it was Hobson's choice, really. I had to do it. And so. But we were then hugely risk averse. We took a view that we weren't going to borrow anything. We weren't going to expand. We were just going to do the best that we could do with the resources we got, which were highly limited. And so effectively, for the first 4 or 5 years of doing the business, it was me in a shed at the end of the garden, working ridiculously long hours and maintaining the systems and the clients and whatever else. And actually, it was incredibly profitable. I got no overheads, so we were actually making serious amounts of money. It was good. But I had a kind of two problems really cropped up for me. One was fundamentally, I'd got really tired of programming. I'd been doing it at that point for 15 years as a business. I'd done it even before that in previous lives. I'd had enough, frankly, and I hated that sort of aspect. I'm a very passionate, sort of driven person, but that had kind of was sapping my will to live. So there was that one aspect. And there was the other aspect where we were building these business management systems. They were business critical for companies. And that meant that pretty much 24 hours a day, I was on call for problems. And by 24 hours a day, I mean literally every day of the week, whether I was on holiday, whether it's Sunday or whatever. And kind of went, oh God, this is going to give me a heart attack at some point. Something's got to change here. And so what we very tentatively about 8-9 years ago now kind of thought, okay, we'll perhaps take somebody on. We got enough space in the shed at the end of the garden to fit some other person on. So we literally employed a chap who still works with us to this day, actually. So he's our longest serving employee, he still works with us, but he started fresh from college. He'd just done his A levels, looking for a job. And again, he knows this is the case. He was cheap. We took him on because he was cheap. He got no experience. He was not exactly highly qualified. And he worked in our shed. And for a year we worked in the shed, and then kind of, okay, that worked okay. And we kind of built it a little bit, and I thought, okay, and then took on another person who was also cheap. It was about, and then sort of, okay, this is working a bit more. We're now running out of room in the shed now. This is a bit of a problem. And so but we were continually busy. If anything, I was holding the business back. We got unlimited almost types of work that we were, amounts of work that we could do. But so I was really kind of reticent to, kind of expand because of the risks that I'd gone through before. Anyway, we pondered it, we kind of grew, and we kind of kept on this process for about 3 years, and we ended up with about 5 people, and we'd actually built a bigger shed in the garden. so we were still, again, obsessive about keeping costs as low as we possibly could. We weren't going to borrow anything. We were going to self-fund all of this. And literally there were 5 of us shoehorned into literally a wooden shed at the end of the drive, and it got to the point where we go, okay, this is getting a bit ridiculous now. But I was still really kind of, the pain of what had happened before was still very raw. We were still even paying down the debts from the previous business. And so it was, we were kind of really reticent. But actually, there was a moment that was completely sort of groundbreaking for us, really. And it was one of our clients who we'd worked with for years with the previous business, and they'd stuck with us to the new business as well. Really supportive customer. And I went to a usual meeting with them, and the chief executive of this business, they'd grown again with sort of, they'd grown over the years with, some of our systems in the background. And he came to me and said, oh, look, I want you to employ somebody in our office. We need somebody full time. And I kind of, I can't really do that. They were based down in the southeast, very far from us. And I'm going, and actually you need multiple skills. You can't get one person that can do front end, back end, database, And so I said, look, it's not going to work putting what I said, but actually we could just put the equivalent of one person's hours aside for you, effectively retained or kind of contracted hours. And it's not revolutionary. We had done it to a certain extent, a limited extent before, but actually the scale of this one, and again at the time it was only about 120 hours a month of sort of committed development hours. And they kind of went for that and kind of, okay, we did that for a couple of months, and it worked really well. Was working for the clients. We gave them a discount on the hours because obviously they were committed to us. So it was kind of great. We'd gone from having really wild turnover, some months we might make 20 grand, some months we might lose 15 grand, to kind of having a little bit more stability of this sort of regularity of income. And we kind of thought, okay, we've got a few other clients we do quite a lot of work for. We'll ask those. And one by one, we kind of went back to some of the more regular clients we did work for. And everybody we asked that we'd been working with over the last 10 years kind of said, yeah, cool, we'll commit to 80 hours a month, or we'll commit to 100 hours a month, or whatever it was. And over that period of about a year, we went from every single one of our projects being kind of quoted up front, done, billed, and then and sort of paid that way, to almost the entire opposite. About 70% of our turnover then was recurrent income. And that absolutely transformed the way we operated. And so what it led to was a stability in turnover. Yes, we were paring back our profit margins, but actually it was guaranteed. You know, we got a guaranteed margin built in. We'd got guaranteed work. We could schedule the resources well in advance, you know, and that then led us to being able to go on this growth path. And so we drew up some very basic kind of formulas effectively, where we always keep about 20 to 25% of headroom above any kind of committed hours we've got. And then that gives us, and obviously as we've grown, that 25% has become bigger. And so we've been able to take on bigger and bigger clients and been able to sort of, we still do quoted work and one-off bits, but actually now we've got to the point now where about, certainly in terms of development work, about 90% of our actual hardcore development work is now under retained contracts. Okay. And as a business owner, as sort of, if you like, financial director, it was absolutely revolutionary, because we've been able to forecast months in advance. We've been able to build the team around it with confidence that we know what we're going to get, what we're going to be turning over, and respond accordingly. And every single one of the retainers we've had has continued, and every single one has at least doubled since they started, you know. And so again, we've kind of grown with them as they've seen the value. So yeah, that was the single biggest thing.
You mentioned a few times now about, you know, going back to the first business and how that's brought a different type of discipline into your current business in terms of doing that. So, how do you keep on top of cash? You know, what's your process of your thinking?
Again, that's something we've kind of evolved in the last couple of years as well, where we've become obviously a lot bigger even in the last 2 or 3 years. And so we've got now a much more formalized management structure in place, including a dedicated kind of accounts person. We are very disciplined, have always been actually very disciplined in terms of understanding the profit and loss of the business and understanding the cash flow. We're lucky as a business where we don't have huge amounts of, apart from staffing resources, wage bills, if you like, we don't actually have a huge amount of other overheads. Yes, we've now got offices and whatever else, but actually that's a pretty small percentage overall of the turnover. And so cash flow wise for us, because again, we're invoicing regularly, we know what we're doing. We've built up reserves that we can kind of cope with people not paying for a month or two or whatever, you know, it's kind of fine. So we're kind of entering a maturity stage really, which is somewhat ironic. We've been going for 20 odd years, you know, and we're probably now just about getting to the point where we're actually getting a little bit more kind of considered about, say, budgets that we're spending on marketing or office, you know, or server development, whatever it might be. And even our own, we do a lot of R&D, so we reinvest a lot back into our own code, our own systems and whatever. And we measure that very carefully every month, and we measure the sort of that side of things. Essentially, the cash flow looks after itself at that point. So we're not overly concerned that so long as we meet those things, those profit margin targets, then, you know, we actually don't really mind too much about other stuff.
Yeah. And so you rebuilt the business from you in the shed. You talked about the number of hours you were working 24/7 in terms of everything done. You've now built a team around you and everything else, you know, but there's always things coming at you and everything else. So how do you manage, not to become overwhelmed at, you know, the scale and growth you've gone through?
Well, so over the years, that has been a challenge. I think the stress of the stress of losing the business the last time, you know, that level of stress has kind of built a level of resilience now to mean that actually, you know, I'm not so bothered about the day-to-day things that come up. You know, I do generally sleep well at night, you know, and things along these lines. Funnily enough, the things I do worry about more are, you know, making sure we're delivering good stuff. That's the thing that keeps me awake at night. If I feel that we haven't, delivered, or there's been a problem that, maybe we could have done better at, that's the kind of thing, rather than the kind of cash flow these days. In terms of the growth, it is a valid question, because we made the mistake the last time of thinking that we had the recipe for growth. We were growing very rapidly during that time. We were growing sort of 100% a year, even, doubling up year on year in the previous business. And just to be clear on that, we were profitable right to the end of the days. It wasn't an unprofitable business. We were just over leveraged. That was all. And so actually one of the things when we did embark on this latest sort of growth phase, which has been going on now for sort of 7 odd years, is that we deliberately limited the growth. We kind of said, actually, we think that maybe between 25 and 30% a year is manageable. It's still big, it's particularly compounded that growth, that definitely. And if we, we're looking to achieve that this year again, that we're probably on target for another sort of 30% growth. But of course, we're now at 20 odd people, it gets harder to do that. We are very aware at the moment that we are at another plateau. We're kind of, if we were to grow again, certainly in terms of the team, that we probably will need to start thinking about structures or getting more hierarchy in place for sort of team leaders and things. And that I'm always very conscious of the kind of culture in the business. I'm always very conscious of making sure that people are on board with what we're doing. We are a people business. I know every business is really, but, we very much are. We absolutely rely on our team to do the work, and I want them to get a level of satisfaction and enjoyment and from it. And so that kind of limiting the growth has always been the thing that I've kind of gone, okay, we can manage that change. For me, it's about manage organizational change. And so if anything, we've held things back, not tried to push it harder.
So how do you, as the business has grown, even at 30% rate per year, yes, please, I know lots of business would love that, but how do you keep as a business focused on ensuring you're doing the right things?
For me, it's actually not that difficult. It's because for me, we build it around the team and we build it around our clients. And I'll use this phrase, particularly when I'm, say, in the recruitment phase of bringing people on the team, or when we're talking about kind of projects or whatever. For me, attitude is key. If somebody's got a good attitude and they've got to be bright, they've got to know, the technicalities. But actually, if somebody's coming in with the right attitude, then that is the thing that really paves the way for kind of growth for us. So we really are a people business. And the other flip side to it as well is, from a client perspective, that we like to build relationships with them, not on an equal footing. At the end of the day, they're paying us to do the work. We understand that and we very much respect that. But we try and build this level of respect and trust. And actually, we like everybody we work with, and generally we'll kind of, we sort of gravitate towards the clients we actually get a good vibe from. As wishy-washy as that is, it's kind of, but actually it isn't that wishy-washy, because a lot, we've now got a team of senior developers who've been with us for several years in most instances, got a team of senior managers now that the kind of, and they know whether, a manager in another client is doing their job right or seems on the right path. And actually, that kind of level of being really careful of the attitude, both internally and externally, is quite key to me. And although it's kind of can't be written down, it's not something it is really intangible. And I know kind of, you'll read business books and it's all about franchising and, you've got to be able to systemize all the rest of it. And this is ironic coming from me, because that is exactly what we do. We systemize businesses, but for me, it's still people, we're systemizing things to make their clients' lives better. That's what we do. And so for me, it is really about the people and really about driving that. And that is something that does concern me, getting bigger. Maintaining that level of and the more I kind of inevitably step back from the day to day bits, because I can't be involved in all of the stuff now. and really, it's not healthy that I should be from a business perspective either. That is something that is on my radar, if you like, to make sure that cultural aspect is maintained, you know.
And I mean, I always talk about the key thing about systemizing processes is not really to make people become automatons. It's actually to release their brains, because actually when you're doing a repetitive process and you know how to do it, or even part of it's automated, then the brain is released to actually think and be creative. But have you created the environment in your business that allows your people's brains to be released and creative?
I agree entirely with that sentiment. And from our business point of view, how we do that is, like I've mentioned earlier, you know, that we empower all of our team, you know, most junior member to the most senior member to make decisions, to do stuff, but also to take risks. You know, so, and again, for me, it's about attitude. If they've taken a risk that's backfired or has caused a problem or whatever, but they've done it with the right attitude or the right thought process behind it, cool. You know, that's fine. You know, we live in an environment with the work that we do, like I said earlier, that we need to take risks, and therefore I kind of encourage a kind of, you know, like controlled risk taking within the business, you know, that and support that, you know, so where we have problems, which we do, you know, we'll try and support fixing those problems so we learn from them, you know, and that's really crucial to me. Yeah. And again, we've got a real thing in the business again that we've evolved over the last couple of years, really, and we're by no means finished on this. In fact, I doubt if we ever will be, that we call kind of closing the circle, where, yeah, we might identify problems that have happened either with us, with the process, with clients or whatever. Yes, it might be clear to understand why those things have happened, but actually then really trying to think about how we can prevent it or minimize it in the future. Yeah. And that bit is often missed in organizations. I think, you know, they recognize problems. They may even have some ISO standard that tells them they've got to write a non-conformance or whatever it might be. Doesn't mean to say they actually do anything about it. You know what I mean? And so for me, that's that. And I'm not saying we're perfect at that, you know, but actually it's something we really try to, you know.
Yes, just because you've written it down doesn't mean actually you've solved it. So yeah, I know that very, very well. So last question then, in terms of, you know, if we were to meet in 5 years' time and we're going to be looking back over the last 5 years, what's happened both professionally and personally for you to consider the 5 years to being successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, had you have asked that maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't have necessarily had an answer. And, you know, I'd have been really skeptical about putting these kind of longer term plans in place. Nowadays, though, I am a lot more, you know, I do subscribe a lot more to having these kind of thought processes of where do you want to be, and motivations. Actually, that's a big thing for me. You know, what's your actual motivation to doing something? And from a business angle, I am really clear on it, actually, that one thing that we may continue to grow, that isn't actually an underlying thing for us necessarily. It's not necessarily just growing for the sake of growing. I would like to think in 5 years' time we will have grown, whether in people, but particularly turnover, that will have increased. But actually, where the business is concerned, what I am working towards is building other forms of residual income as well. And so we run and operate 2 very small data centers, for example, that we own within the business. And that again, very sort of synergistically, you know, obviously we put our systems on them. We run a number of other small scale kind of software as a service, email clients and other kind of tools that we're looking to put in place. And we want to kind of grow those aspects of the business because they are very profitable in terms of thing. And again, it's sort of moving away a little bit from, even with the retained contracts, they're very much a kind of do once, get paid once process. And that relies on having lots of people, lots of development time. And I think for certainly forever and a day, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we will still have that element of the business, but we very much want to become our own largest client, you know, where we ourselves develop systems that maybe become software as a service or whatever that we can build, again, for the benefit of clients as well, where we can build a kind of a Wilxite kind of ecosystem of services that will actually be kind of supporting what we do for the clients, but also provide a kind of residual income. In terms of personally, I'd like to be talking to you from the Alps, is what not in the shed at the end of my garden, and really, sort of. From just a personal sort of chief executive point of view, I mean, I've morphed roles really from being a managing director to being a chief executive. So I mean, I've deliberately, if you like, that kind of formality of stepping back from the business now. I've already done that, although I still do work kind of day to day, but not as anywhere near as much as I used to. And in 5 years' time, I would absolutely like to think that actually the business very much would run for many months or years without me even being involved at all. Not that I intend that is the case, but that at least it's set up to be so, if you see what I mean. That would be a very sort of personal, sort of personally good achievement for me, I think, if I got to that stage.
Brilliant. Well, James, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been fascinating. The whole story from the first business that grew rapidly to then had some issues in terms of over leveraging yourselves when the financial crisis happened, to taking that time to build your new business and really think about it and how it's grown steadily and slowly over time, but based on your deliberate thinking about how that would grow. I love the idea in terms of the way that you ask your developers to talk to your clients as much. They're not standoffish for using a piece of paper. And from my software development past, I know how powerful that really is in terms of doing that. And I love the concept of this building trust with your clients over time and how you've then turned that into a new business model in terms of your retained revenue activity from them, which is really good. And really that sort of end of the conversation around empowering your team, to take the risks, and only through that do you get learning and growth. It's been really inspiring to hear that within a software development world. So thank you so much for this. We always finish off with a quick fire round. So if we can, let's see if we can keep this down to a few minutes, because we've had a very great conversation. So if you could go back to younger you, what advice would you give yourself?
I'd say still take risks. I'd say be passionate. That's the one thing I think I'd like to say that I've maintained throughout all of my business and relationships with people is a level of passion, just enthusiastic. I think if you start losing it, and I suppose the actual advice was when you lose the enthusiasm, that's the point to move on, or change what you're doing. So that I'll try and keep it brief, but that's what I'd do.
Brilliant. Okay. What books would you recommend?
Now, I am not going to recommend any books at all. In fact, I'm actually going to recommend no books, because I have read lots and lots of the business books. I've done various business coaching and I've read whatever. I would recommend that you take any advice, including from me, including this book thing, with your own filter on it. What is it? Again, I used the phrase earlier, motivation, So if you're motivated by running the most well-organized business, or you're motivated by making the most profit in your business, cool, read those books. But actually find the thing that motivates you. And don't read any, all of these books are just based on their motivation, their thought, and they're good. They're good, but you've got to be able to take the ideas from them. So I'm deliberately not recommending anybody specifically, because I think actually you've got to really learn your own way and what really motivates you, and then seek out that information that's going to help you achieve whatever that might be.
One of my thoughts around books is a book that I read called The One Thing. And, out of every book, I just looked for the one thing that inspired me from that book that I would apply to my life or my business life. So, yeah, very, very interesting. Very good. Okay, podcasts. Do you listen to any podcasts?
Do you know what? Again, I'm going to be useless on this. No, I don't. So, sorry.
Okay. On your phone now, any of the apps on your phone that make most difference for you? What really help you?
Yeah, that is a good question. Do you know what? For me, it's about, I've got one app that I use from a productivity point of view, and it is the simplest app in the world, and it's a Pomodoro timer. And I don't know whether you're familiar with the Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off kind of thing. Yeah. And it's a dead straightforward app. That's it. It does nothing else other than remind me that I can take a 5-minute break and that I've got 25 minutes to work. For me, where I'm very I'm all over the place anyway, I'm being pulled from pillar to post, I'm doing whatever, actually been able to kind of have, when I start the 25 minutes, I set then a thing that I'm going to achieve in that 25 minutes and that's it. And I try and remain focused for that time. So it's the simplest app in the world, but yeah, and there's plenty of them around, but I say the one I use is literally just called, I think, Pomodoro. And that is a good technique, I find, for productivity.
Brilliant. My favorite question of all, who's had the most influence on you as a business leader?
My wife. Do you want me to expand, or
if you wish?
She has held me accountable. No, in all seriousness, she has absolutely held me accountable to the hours that I work, the motivations again as to why we do certain things, and and has also been the ultimate person to be bouncing random ideas off, and the one who'll go, well, that's bloody stupid, isn't it? And so. Yeah, of course, there's plenty of other very inspirational leaders out there and all the rest of it. But me personally, then I would absolutely say her.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. And finally, how can people get hold of you?
Yeah, well, that's very straightforward. We do now have a website, so you can go onto wilxite.com. I will spell that out for anybody listening. It's WILXITE.com. There's an inquiry form on there if anybody wants to get in touch, or obviously a phone number and email. We're always happy to receive inquiries. I'm always happy to talk people through, some of the stuff we can do. And I will just say to anybody that is listening, we don't do a hard sell. I just talk at people until they go, for God's sake, yeah, shut up and do that. That's my general sales process. But if anybody wants to be talked at for half an hour, feel free to give me a call. That's fine.
James, well, thank you so much for this conversation today. It has been brilliant.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.